Brought to you by wikivd.com. Trial of Yolanda Saldivar. State of Texas v. Yolanda Saldivar was a criminal trial held at the Harris County Courthouse in Houston, Texas. The trial began with the jury swearing in on October 9 through opening statements on October 12, to a verdict on October 23, 1995. Former nurse Yolanda Saldivar was tried on one count of first-degree murder after the shooting death of American Tejano music singer Selena on March 31, 1995, after which she held police and the FBI Crisis Negotiation Unit at bay for almost 10 hours. The case has been described as the most important trial for the Latino population and was compared to the O.J. Simpson murder trial by media outlets. It was one of the most publicly followed trials in the history of the state of Texas. On April 3, Saldivar was arraigned and pleaded not guilty. She explained that the shooting was accidental and that she had intended to commit suicide. Judge Mike Westergren, who presided over the case, appointed high-profile defense attorney Douglas Tinker and his team to appear for Saldivar. The public criticized prosecutor Carlos Valdez as an inexperienced criminal lawyer. The prosecution argued against the motion of change of venue from Corpus Christi, Texas to Houston, while the defense believed that Selena's high-profile status in her hometown might result in a biased jury. The prosecution team called between 45 and 50 witnesses, including Selena's father and manager of her music career Abraham Quintanilla Jr., Selena's widower Chris Perez, employees at Selena, etc., and at the Days Inn motel where the shooting occurred, a paramedic, several gun experts, the owners of the gun shop where Saldivar purchased the gun, emergency personnel, and Lloyd White, who performed the autopsy. The defense team called fewer witnesses, including Saldivar's parents, former co-workers, motel staff at the Days Inn, Selena's former 7th-grade teacher, and the lead murder investigator. The evidence used in the trial included the gun used to kill Selena, the outfit Saldivar wore the day she claimed she was sexually assaulted, and the recorded conversations between FBI negotiators Larry Young and Isaac Valencia and Saldivar. The jury convicted Saldivar of first-degree murder after a 2-hour deliberation, and she was sentenced to a maximum of life imprisonment with no eligibility for parole until March 2025. Fans outside the courtroom cheered the verdict. Many were seen expressing their delight at the outcome to Saldivar's parents, and some wore T-shirts degrading to their daughter. There were more than 200 accredited media representatives at the courthouse. The trial generated interest in Spain, Europe, South America, Australia, and Japan. Tinker announced an appeal, but it was denied by Westergren both in 1998 and 1999. Valdez published a book about the trial entitled Justice for Selena: The State vs. Yolanda Saldivar in 2004. As of December 2014, Saldivar was representing herself in an attempt to be released from prison, claiming that some witnesses were not called during the trial, and that evidence went missing following the trial. Yolanda Saldivar. Saldivar, an in-home nurse for terminal cancer patients, was a fan of country music. However, she did enjoy Shelly Lares, a Tejano music artist, and disliked Selena for dominating award categories. Saldivar's favorite musician was nominated in 1991. Her niece persuaded her to go to a Selena concert in her hometown of San Antonio, Texas. Saldivar became a fan and decided to form a fan club promoting Selena. She contacted the singer's father and manager Abraham Quintanilla Jr. seeking permission to start one. After a meeting with Quintanilla Jr., he agreed to Saldivar's request. and she became the founder and acting president of the Selena Fan Club. In January 1994, Selena opened 2 boutiques in Texas, one in Corpus Christi, the other in San Antonio. Because of her touring schedule, she was unable to run the businesses and decided to appoint Saldivar as manager, since Quintanilla Jr. believed she was the perfect choice, having successfully filled the role as president of the fan club for 3 years. The singer began receiving complaints from employees, her fashion designer, and her cousin about Saldivar's management skills. They claimed that Saldivar mismanaged Selena's affairs, manipulated their decisions, destroyed their creations, intimidated and threatened them, and secretly recorded them without their consent and knowledge. Selena did not believe Saldivar, now a close friend, would impose on her fashion business. Quintanilla Jr. began receiving complaints after the initial attempts to have Saldivar fired from her job failed. He tried convincing Selena that Saldivar might be a bad influence on her. She brushed aside the comments, since her father always mistrusted people. In January 1995, Quintanilla Jr. began receiving letters and phone calls from angry fans who had sent their enrollment fees for the fan club and received nothing. He began an investigation and found that Saldivar had used forged checks to embezzle $30,000 from both the fan club and the boutiques. On March 9, 1995, the Quintanilla family held a meeting to discuss the disappearing funds. Saldivar's answers to Quintanilla Jr.'s questions were not convincing, and he informed her that if she could not disprove his accusations, that he would get the police involved. Selena's murder. The day after being confronted by the Quintanilla family, Saldivar was banned from contacting Selena. Saldivar purchased a .38 special revolver but lied to the clerk about her intentions, claiming she was a nurse whose patients' relatives had threatened her life. Saldivar convinced Selena to meet her alone at her Days Inn motel room on March 31, 1995. In the motel room, Selena demanded financial papers required for tax preparation. Saldivar delayed handing over the papers, claiming that she had been raped during a recent Mexico trip. Selena drove Saldivar to Doctors Regional Hospital, but doctors found no evidence of rape. When they returned to the motel room, Selena emptied Saldivar's satchel, which was filled with documents relating to the boutiques and fan club, as well as the .38 revolver. Saldivar grabbed the gun and pointed it at Selena. As Selena attempted to flee, Saldivar shot her in the back, severing an artery leading from her heart. Critically wounded, Selena ran to the motel's lobby and collapsed on the floor, naming Saldivar as her assailant and giving the room number where she had been shot. Her condition began to deteriorate rapidly as motel staff attended to her. Selena was pronounced dead at 1:05 p.m. from loss of blood and cardiac arrest. Saldivar's arrest. After the shooting, Saldivar got into her pickup truck and attempted to leave the motel. Rosario Garza, a motel staff member, saw Saldivar leave her room with a wrapped towel. It was later thought that she had been on her way to Q Productions to shoot Quintanilla Jr. and others, waiting for Selena to arrive for a planned recording session. However, she was spotted by a responding police officer. An officer emerged from the cruiser, drew his gun, and ordered Saldivar to get out of the truck. Saldivar did not comply. Instead, she backed up and parked adjacent to 2 cars. Her truck was then blocked by the police cruiser. Saldivar picked up the pistol, pointed it at her right temple, and threatened to commit suicide. A SWAT team and the FBI Crisis Negotiation Unit were brought in. Musicologist Hamilton Novas commented that the event was reminiscent of O.J. Simpson's threatened suicide 10 months earlier. Larry Young and Isaac Valencia began negotiating with Saldivar. They ran a phone line to their base of operations adjacent to Saldivar's pickup truck as the standoff continued. Motel guests were ordered to remain in the rooms until police could escort them out. Saldivar surrendered after nearly 9.5 hours. By that time, hundreds of fans had gathered at the scene. Many wept as police took Saldivar away. Within hours of Selena's murder, a press conference was held. Assistant Police Chief Ken Bung and Quintanilla Jr. informed the press that a possible motive was that Selena had gone to the Days Inn motel to terminate her employment. Saldivar was still not identified by name in media reports. Rudy Trevino, director of the Texas Talent Music Association, and sponsor of the Tejano Musico Awards, declared that March 31, 1995 would be known as Black Friday. Pre-trial. On April 3, Saldivar was arraigned and pleaded not guilty to Selena's murder. Her bail was set at $100,000, though it was raised to $500,000. At the behest of District Attorney Carlos Valdez, who considered Saldivar to be a flight risk. When bail was announced, people asked why the death penalty had not been sought. The Nueces County Jail was deluged with death threats and there were public calls for vigilante justice. Some gang members in Texas were reported to have taken up collections to raise the bond for Saldivar so they could kill her when she was released. Veteran CCPD Detective Paul Rivera led the murder investigation. Originally, an unnamed man was hired to defend Saldivar but withdrew from the case on April 4, fearing community retaliation and concerned about his children's reaction when they learned he was defending Saldivar, whom they disliked. Judge Mike Westergren began searching for a defense attorney. Prosecutor Carlos Valdez was designated lead prosecutor, while Mark Sciorca was appointed his legal counsel. On April 6, the grand jury was called to determine whether to indict Saldivar for murder. After about an hour, the jury had returned a true bill and the indictment was randomly assigned to the 214th District Court. Carlos Valdez believed that a speedy trial with Westergren presiding over the case was probable. Douglas Tinker, a 30-year veteran attorney, was assigned to defend Saldivar. Tinker was called one of the best criminal defense lawyers in the state of Texas and was estimated by Richard Haynes, also a Texas criminal defense attorney, to be worth $50 million. His wife, fearful that they would suffer from community retribution, asked Tinker not to take the case. Arnold Garcia, former district prosecutor, was chosen by Tinker as his co-counsel. The judge honored Tinker's request for a private investigator. The court date was originally set for August 17, but for unknown reasons was pushed back 2 months to October 9. On May 18, Tinker and Valdez argued about the possibility of reducing Saldivar's bond to $10,000. Tinker argued that she should not be in prison since she had not yet been found guilty of murder and deserved to be out on bail. Valdez argued that Saldivar was a flight risk, with contacts in Mexico, and were she to be released from prison, it was unlikely she would be seen again. Saldivar's parents, siblings, and former co-workers argued that she had no financial resources to make bond, and that she was incapable of the actions of which she was accused. Valdez called Rivera to the stand. He claimed that Saldivar had developed several foreign contacts as a result of working for Selena. Rivera also brought up the ongoing investigation of the embezzlement claims, stating that Saldivar might have access to funds that the investigation had not yet uncovered. Westergren denied the bond reduction and Saldivar was returned to jail. After the May 18 ruling, Westergren decided to move the case to Houston, Texas. His decision was based upon the demographics of predominantly Hispanic Nueces County, citing a preponderance of people who viewed Selena as a well-known and beloved member of the Hispanic population. On August 4, the pre-trial hearing began as Tinker filed 3 motions: a change of venue to Houston, a motion to suppress or exclude Saldivar's written statement, and a motion to suppress or exclude Saldivar's oral statements made at the time of her arrest. Tinker presented 12 witnesses: a former district judge, a former district attorney, a former first assistant district attorney, several private lawyers, and members of the media. They all expressed concern that Saldivar could not have an impartial jury because of the overwhelming media coverage. A Spanish-language radio personality informed the judge that the general consensus among Hispanics in the area was that Saldivar was guilty and that she would be acquitted because of the faulty juridical system and Valdez's lack of experience. The judge recessed the hearing, and Valdez scrambled to find witnesses who believed that an unbiased jury could be selected were the trial to be held in Corpus Christi. The hearing resumed on August 7, and Valdez presented 5 witnesses who believed that Saldivar could have a fair trial despite the media coverage. The following day, Westergren granted the motion to change the venue to Houston, Texas. First week of trial. The selection of jury members was completed on October 9. The jury included 7 white Americans, 4 Hispanics and 1 African American. Westergren ordered that the trial would neither be televised nor taped, and limited the number of reporters in the courtroom to avoid a repeat of the Simpson circus. The trial began on October 11. In his opening statement, Valdez claimed that Saldivar deliberately killed Selena, calling the act senseless and cowardly because Selena had been shot in the back. Valdez called the incident a simple case of murder. Tinker opened his statement as though he was describing a mystery movie, calling Quintanilla Jr. a controlling and dominating father ambitious for power and money. His removal of Selena from school to sing in nightclubs and bars served the sole purpose of making money. He infringed on his family's privacy by demanding that they live in a compound so that he could watch their every move. Tinker asserted that Selena wanted to be independent and break from her father's control by operating her own business. According to Tinker, after Saldivar fired the gun, she ran after her friend to help her by getting her into her pickup truck. He claimed that Quintanilla Jr. called Saldivar a lesbian obsessed with Selena. Tinker ended his opening statement saying that Quintanilla Jr. drove Saldivar to near madness by threatening to destroy her friendship with Selena. The prosecutor's first witness was Quintanilla Jr. Valdez asked if he had had sexual relations with a raped Saldivar. He also asked him if he ever called Saldivar a lesbian. Quintanilla Jr. said no. Valdez then asking him about the alleged theft. Quintanilla Jr. told the court that Saldivar was a thief. Valdez then called Chris Perez, Selena's widower, who testified that he and Selena had stopped trusting Saldivar long before the crime was committed. Kyle Voss and Mike McDonald from A Place to Shoot, the store where Saldivar had purchased the gun, testified that they had instructed her on the proper use of the gun. They also said that she had returned the gun 2 days after originally purchasing it, claiming that her father had given her a pistol. She returned 11 days later to repurchase the gun. On October 12, Valdez called Trinidad Espinosa to the stand. He testified that he saw Saldivar pointing a gun while running after Selena. Saldivar then stopped, lowered the gun and walked back into her motel room displaying no emotion. After hearing this testimony, Marcela Quintanilla experienced chest and arm pains, and was hospitalized to treat a sudden rise in her blood pressure. Motel maid Norma Marie Martinez also described the same events as Espinosa, but added that Saldivar had called Selena a bitch. Tinker asked Martinez to indicate where she had been on a diagram of the scene of the crime. He believed that Martinez could not have seen or heard anything, because she was a considerable distance from the vicinity of the shooting. Emergency room personnel who attended to Saldivar when Selena drove her to the hospital to be checked for rape claimed that Saldivar had lied to Selena about the rape, as there were inconsistencies between the story she told them and the one she told Selena. Tinker asked the nurse to describe Saldivar's mood at that time. She replied that the Saldivar showed symptoms of depression. Tinker asked if those symptoms were typically found in a victim of sexual assault. The nurse agreed they were. Another nurse who attended to Saldivar stated that she had red welts on her neck and arms, but that they did not resemble the bruises a person would receive from an assault by a baseball bat, as Saldivar claimed. The prosecutor showed the jury the outfit Saldivar had worn during her alleged rape. He claimed that someone had purposefully torn holes and shredded the shirt with scissors. On October 13, Rosalinda Gonzalez, the assistant manager of the Days Inn, was called to testify. She told the jury that when Selena arrived in the lobby after being shot, she had asked the singer who shot her. Selena cried out, "The girl in room 158. Ruben Delian, the motel's salesman, said that Selena told him, Yolanda Saldivar shot me. The one in room 158. Receptionist Shauna Vella testified that she had heard the same statements, but added that Selena had screamed, "Lock the door, she'll shoot me again," before collapsing. Vella told the jury that there was so much blood that she felt nauseous before calling 911. The last person to be called to testify was paramedic Richard Fredrickson, who described in detail Selena's condition in a mysterious ring she clutched in her hands. The Quintanilla family were seen sobbing as Fredrickson detailed his attempts to save Selena's life, while Saldivar stared blankly. Second week of trial. The trial resumed on Monday, October 16, with the playing of the recorded negotiations between the FBI Crisis Negotiation Unit and Saldivar. The tape began with Saldivar stating how badly she wanted to die. During the conversation, the jury heard Larry Young try to persuade her to lower her gun. Saldivar said that she could not do so. Young told her that by committing suicide she would only harm her parents. Saldivar then asked to contact her mother to say goodbye and ask for forgiveness. She continued to whine, "I just wanna die," as Young began talking about religion to determine if she believed in a faith that might cause her to reconsider suicide. Young told Saldivar that if she would give herself up, he would place a jacket over her so that the media would not have a picture of her face. During her surrender, Isaac Valencia told Saldivar that if she were to surrender, they promised to turn off all of the lights that were pointing towards her truck. She agreed. As she left her truck, she was scared by the dozens of armed police and FBI agents who were pointing rifles and pistols at her. She ran back to her truck, pointed the gun at her head and screamed at Young, "They're carrying guns! They're carrying guns! They're going to kill me! They're going to kill me." Anchor newswoman Maria Celeste Raras wrote in her 1997 investigative book that she found it curious for a person who cried for hours that she wanted to die would be afraid that someone might make her wish come true. The New York Times also commented that she alternately begged to be killed and expressed fear that she would be killed if she left the truck. As the taped conversation continued, the jury heard Saldivar's reaction to the news of Selena's death after her phone picked up a local radio station's signal. In an angry voice, Saldivar asked Young why he had kept the singer's condition from her, since she wanted to visit Selena at the hospital believing she was still alive. Young told Saldivar not to believe the radio announcement, and that he did not know about Selena's current condition. The conversation then switched to Saldivar blaming Quintanilla Jr. for the murder, claiming that he threatened to kill her. She explained to Young that she bought the gun for protection after finding her car tires deliberately slashed. She also told him how Quintanilla Jr. sexually abused her by sticking a knife in her vagina, threatening to murder her if she went to the police. When asked about what happened in her motel room, Saldivar exclaimed, "I bought this gun to kill myself, not her, and she told me, Yolanda, I don't want you to kill yourself, and we were talking about that when I took it out and pointed it to my head, and when I pointed it to my head she opened the door. I said, Selena, close that door, and when I did that gun went off." The prosecution then told the jury that comments by some officers had planted the idea in Saldivar's head that the shooting was accidental. The defense countered, stating that although she did not use the word accident, she did not mean to harm Selena. John Houston, a police officer who was present during the standoff, was asked during the 9.5 hours that Saldivar held the gun to her head how many times it went off. He said none. The trial resumed on October 18. Robert Garza, a Texas Ranger, told the jury that during the preliminary hearings in Corpus Christi, he witnessed Saldivar making gestures indicating that the shooting had been accidental, though she had not indicated this in her confession. The defense called Rivera to the stand and explained to the jury that Rivera had a conflict of interest after finding out that he had a poster of Selena hanging on his wall and was treated to a Selena t-shirt by Quintanilla Jr. Tinker explained to the jury that the confession was signed by an exhausted, sleep-deprived Saldivar after 11 hours of questioning and being denied water, food, and use of a bathroom. Tinker asked Rivera why he destroyed his notes, and why he had not recorded his interrogation of Saldivar, had not provided her with a lawyer as the law requires, and had not allowed her to see her relatives after signing her confession. A few days later, the Mexican Mafia sent Tinker a signed postcard declaring their intention to harm him and his family for defending Saldivar. On October 19, the defense called the two surgeons who tried to revive Selena at the hospital. The defense questioned why Quintanilla Jr. would request that a blood transfusion not to be performed on Selena due to his religious beliefs, when by law, Perez would have the final say whether or not the procedure would be performed. The autopsy pictures of Selena were displayed for everyone to see. The white American jury member was affected by the pictures and was seen bursting into tears, as Lloyd White described his findings in detail. According to Aurora, Saldivar was seen as impassive. She had lowered her head when the autopsy pictures were shown. After confirming that Selena was not pregnant, contradicting rumors in media reports, White announced his conclusion: this was a homicide, not an accident. The prosecution called on a firearms expert who found the gun to be in working condition, and stating that a person pulling the trigger must use a great amount of pressure. Valdez showed pictures of the motel room where Selena had been shot, indicating that it was impossible for her not know her friend had been wounded. Valdez said, this meant that she had not come to Selena's aid because she chose not to. The defense arguments began on October 20 with Barbara Schultz, the hotel's general manager, taking the stand. Tinker asked if Selena had actually screamed out to them to lock the doors. She replied that Selena had never asked for the doors to be locked, and was only moaning on the floor. Schultz further stated that her former employee Vela was not trustworthy. Schultz also said that all the employees began formulating different opinions on what happened on March 31 when the prosecution called on them to testify. Motel staff maid Gloria Magana doubted the validity of Espinosa and Martinez's accounts. She told the jury that it was impossible for both employees to have seen Saldivar chasing Selena, because their work was on the other side of the motel building. Magana claimed to have seen Selena running through the parking lot but did not see Saldivar chasing after her. Tinker called Marilyn Greer, Selena's 7th-grade teacher, to the stand. She told the jury that Selena had had the ability to graduate with honors and could have easily obtained a college scholarship. Greer then spoke about how Quintanilla Jr. had taken away the possibility of college for Selena, wasting her youth by forcing her to sing at nightclubs and bars for money, something that was unhealthy for a 13-year-old girl. Third week of trial. On October 23, the defense presented their closing arguments, claiming that the shooting was an accident and that Rivera was not interested in pursuing justice. He wanted to make a case. They also argued that Rivera knew hours beforehand that the Saldivar case was a big case and had wanted to be the one to get her. The defense claimed that Selena still referred to Saldivar as her dearest friend, pointing out that the singer took her to the hospital despite having a recording session scheduled that day. They reminded the jury that an employee demonstrated that the gun can fire off with just one's little finger. The defense accused the prosecution of manipulating the jury's emotions by displaying photographs of Selena at the morgue and the trail of blood from the motel room to the lobby. They concluded by telling the jury to not side with a rabid father. In the prosecution's closing statement, Sciorca told the jury that Selena had been reduced to a mere picture thanks to the March 31 actions of the defendant. Sciorca asked the jury why Saldivar, a nurse, did not administer first aid, and why she had not called 911 after accidentally shooting the singer in the back. Sciorca then provided details of the 3 different stories Saldivar used to explain the purchase of the gun, as well as the different stories about her alleged rape. The prosecutor pointed out that if Saldivar had wanted to commit suicide, she had ample time to do so. Valdez took out a calendar for the month of March 1995 and chronologically pointed out the events preceding the killing of Selena. According to Valdez, Saldivar hated Quintanilla Jr. and believed that she got revenge by killing his daughter, someone he loved the most. Verdict and reactions. Saldivar's crime was punishable by up to 99 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. Saldivar was kept at Nueces County Jail under a suicide watch before her trial. After closing arguments, the jury deliberated for 2 hours and 23 minutes. As people were waiting for the verdict, prosecutors and the defense team signed autographs for the media, as did Saldivar. Saldivar's family also signed autographs while Quintanilla Jr. remained in his seat awaiting the verdict. The jury found Saldivar guilty of first-degree murder. She received the maximum sentence of life in prison with parole eligibility in 30 years. Before the verdict was read, some in the crowd, in Quintanilla Jr., were skeptical of the outcome of the trial after O.J. Simpson's acquittal a week earlier. Saldivar told her defense team that she wanted to kill herself after the verdict was read. The Hispanic population cheered as Westergren delivered the verdict and Saldivar's sentence. Celebrations and festivals were planned throughout the states of Texas and California, and in some areas in Mexico. Fans outside the courtroom began playing Selena's music and cheered. 4 hours. Some fans were seen cheering in Saldivar's face as police officers drove her off to prison. Other fans prayed and cried out that justice had been served. Traffic in Texas was reportedly at a standstill as people took to the streets and highways in cheering the verdict. Saldivar's parents were greeted by fans wearing T-shirts degrading her and screams from fans who told them, "Now let's kill the murderer and hang the witch." The verdict was front-page news in dozens of newspapers across the United States. Media coverage and aftermath. The Spanish-language media refer to this case as the O.J. Simpson trial for Hispanics. It was the most-watched trial in years in the state of Texas. The Brownsville Herald called the case the biggest courthouse media event to hit Houston. According to Texas Monthly, there were more than 200 media personnel stationed at the courthouse. Univision and Telemundo aired approximately 90 minutes worth of coverage daily. Iraras was called the trial's undisputed media star for her coverage of the trial, and her Prima Impacto program had the most knowledgeable courtroom analyst in former state district judge Jorge Rangel, who provided his expertise on the law during the playing of the recorded conversation between Saldivar and Young in the courtroom. Saldivar called out "Where's Larry?" a mantra that was put on T-shirts sold to the crowds. The Chicago Tribune noted the difference in interest in the Selena murder trial between Hispanics and white Americans. Donna Dickerson, a white American magazine publisher, told the Chicago Tribune that she had no interest in the trial because of Selena's Hispanic background, and noted that Mexican Americans did not show the same interest as whites. When Elvis Presley was found dead, the Selena murder trial was called the trial of the century, and the most important trial to the Hispanic population. The trial generated interest in Spain, Europe, South America, Australia, and Japan. Tinker announced an appeal before signing autographs for the cheering crowds. On December 22, the Houston Chronicle reported that Saldivar's lawyers were seeking a retrial, citing the prosecution's failure to notify them that a key witness had once been convicted of theft. Maria Norma Martinez, a motel maid, was said to be the only one to have seen the shooting. She claimed to have heard Saldivar call Selena a bitch. The prosecution had used the remark to discredit the defense's claim that the shooting was accidental. Westergren denied the request, and called the prosecutor's action somewhat problematic, but decided an appeals court should decide on a retrial. Both requests for an appeal were denied on October 3, 1998 and on August 19, 1999. On November 22, 1995, she arrived at the Gatesville unit in Gatesville, Texas for processing. Saldivar is currently serving her sentence at the Mountain View unit in Gatesville, operated by the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. She will be eligible for parole on March 30, 2025. Because of multiple death threats from incarcerated Selena fans, Saldivar was placed in isolation and spends 23 hours a day alone in her 9-by cell apart from other inmates who may want to do her harm. Saldivar has asked the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals to accept a petition that challenges her conviction. She claims the petition was filed in 2000 with the 214th District Court but was never sent to the higher court. Her request was received on March 31, 2008, the 13th anniversary of Selena's death. Tinker and Garcia told a Texas Monthly magazine editor that losing the trial lessens their chances of getting shot by a fan. Hispanics in Texas had an increased level of trust in the state's judicial system after the verdict was read. The League of United Latin American Citizens began a campaign that encouraged Hispanics to respond to jury duty requests. E! aired the trial as part of an episode of E! True Hollywood Story in December 1996. People magazine called it too cheap looking to have any dramatic impact. but found the actor playing Tinker interesting. By virtue of a judge's order, the gun used to kill Selena was destroyed in 2002 and the pieces thrown into Corpus Christi Bay. However, fans and historians did not approve of the decision, claiming that the event was historical and that the gun should have been placed in a museum. In 1997, Errázuriz published her book Selena's Secret, which included interviews with Saldivar recounting the singer's real life and her side of the events of March 31. The book met with negative reviews from fans as well as Quintanilla Jr., who claimed Errázuriz sympathized with the convicted killer. Valdez published his book on the trial, Justice for Selena: The State vs. Yolanda Saldivar, in 2004. The following year he talked to 200 students majoring in political science at Texas A. In December 2014, the San Antonio Express-News reported that Saldivar was mounting a new legal effort to get an early release from prison, following numerous appeals in her case. The news of Saldivar's potential early release by a fake news agency which reported that Saldivar would be released as early as January 1, 2015 sparked a social media frenzy among fans. Valdez told the San Antonio Express-News that Saldivar is currently representing herself and that a court date has not yet been set. Saldivar claims that witnesses were not called on, and files have gone missing since the end of the trial. Quintanilla Jr. said that he doesn't care if Saldivar gets an early release since nothing is going to bring his daughter back. He does say that Saldivar would be safer in prison rather than being freed. Brought to you by wikivd.com. Would you like to know more?